Captain Soren Ward stood at the bridge of the EG Atlas, staring out at the swirling depths of space. The vastness of it always made him feel small, but at the same time, it reminded him of the power he commanded. A fleet of ships, Earth's finest, waiting for his orders. Behind him, the soft hum of the ship's engines echoed through the steel walls, a constant reminder of the might of humanity. "Captain, you need to see this," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Soren turned to face Lieutenant Carla Oren, his tactical officer. She stood at the console, her face a mixture of focus and worry. He approached quickly, his boots clanging softly against the floor. On the display before her was a video feed of a colony, New Horizon, a peaceful human settlement on the outer rim of Earth's space domain. The once bustling colony now lay in ruins. "Replay the transmission," Soren ordered, his voice flat but carrying authority. Carla obeyed, and the video paused on the image of a tall, dark-skinned alien with glowing red eyes, Icor, the notorious warlord of the Vresk. The creature stood before the wreckage of a building, its immense frame casting an intimidating shadow. In its hand, it held what appeared to be a live communication device, its voice a deep growl that sent chills down Soren's spine. "I am Icor, commander of the Vresk. You humans are weak, fragile. Surrender your military might, or we will annihilate every last one of you. Your colonies will burn, and your name will be forgotten." The message ended abruptly, but the final words echoed in Soren's mind. Carla looked up, meeting his gaze. "Captain, what do we do now?" Soren clenched his jaw, his mind already working through the options. There was no question, no room for negotiation. The Vresk had been raiding human settlements for months, but this? This was different. This was a direct threat to Earth itself. "We don't negotiate with terrorists," Soren muttered under his breath, more to himself than to anyone else. "Yes, sir," Carla replied quietly, but her eyes betrayed her concern. The Vresk were ruthless, and Soren's decision would not only affect the military but could cost countless lives if it went wrong. "Sir?" came a voice from across the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Daniel Cross, the ship's operations officer. "We've got a priority message from Earth Command." Soren nodded, and Carla quickly transferred the feed to the main screen. The image flickered, revealing the stern face of General Adeline Reed, commander of the United Earth Military. "Captain Ward," she began, her voice clipped and authoritative. "You are ordered to neutralize the Vresk threat immediately. We cannot afford another attack on Earth's colonies. The Vresk have escalated their operations, and we need to send a clear message: humanity will not bend." Soren's eyes narrowed. The general's face was hard, but the weight of her words was clear. "How much time do we have?" "None. The Vresk have planted an orbital weapon above New Horizon. If they activate it, the entire colony will be irradiated and rendered uninhabitable. You must act now." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Soren with nothing but the faint hum of the Atlas's engines. He turned back to the tactical display. "Lieutenant, prepare the fleet. We're launching an assault." The crew moved with military precision. Carla began issuing orders, while Cross relayed commands to the fighter squadrons. The UEG Atlas, one of the largest warships in Earth's fleet, would lead the charge. Soren's mind raced, running through the mission in his head. They would need to infiltrate the Vresk stronghold on New Horizon, destroy the weapon, and eliminate the threat before it could be used. As the ship's engines powered up, the UEG Atlas slowly pulled away from its orbit around Mars, heading into the vast unknown. The silence on the bridge was deafening, broken only by the hum of machinery and the occasional murmur of officers. Soren walked over to his command chair and sat, his hands resting lightly on the controls. "Carla, give me a sitrep. What are we up against?" Carla typed quickly, bringing up a list of Vresk assets. "Icor has fortified his position with ground forces, but it's unclear how many. We've detected a Vresk dreadnought in orbit, heavily armed with plasma turrets. There's no doubt they'll try to engage our fleet before we can make it to the surface." Soren's eyes narrowed. "We'll need to keep their fleet distracted while our ground forces infiltrate the planet. We'll break their defense lines." What's the status of the planetary shield? Cross chimed in. They've raised the planetary shield, Captain. The only way through is to disable their communication center. Once we knock out their comms, the shield will drop. Then we can go in full force. Soren nodded, the gears of war turning in his mind. Then we disable their communications first. All units prepare for battle. This is a strike to end the Vresk's reign of terror. As the UG Atlas neared the planet, Soren looked out the window, his gaze fixed on the swirling atmosphere of New Horizon. It had once been a peaceful colony, a place where families raised children, where humanity had a foothold on the frontier. Now, it was the front line of an intergalactic war. In the distance, a streak of light burned through the sky, the first volley from the Vresk dreadnought. It came with no warning, a burst of plasma that sent shockwaves through the ship. Alarms blared, and the crews scrambled to their stations. The ship rocked, but Soren remained calm, his hand gripping the console as the Atlas veered to avoid the incoming fire. "Return fire!" Soren ordered, his voice unwavering. The Atlas's cannons lit up, sending a barrage of energy toward the Vresk dreadnought. But the alien ship was heavily armored, and the blasts only made a dent in its defenses. "Sir, we've lost contact with our fighter squadrons," Carla reported urgently. "Get them back in the fight." Soren snapped, his voice steady but firm. "We don't stop until New Horizon is safe." The battle had begun in earnest. Soren stood up from his chair, his eyes hard with determination. The Vresk had made their mistake. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, and they would learn, just as every enemy before them had, that humans did not negotiate with terrorists. "We don't give up," Soren said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. The UG Atlas surged forward, its fleet trailing behind, ready to take the fight to the Vresk. And this time, humanity would not back down.
The UEG Atlas descended into the dense clouds surrounding New Horizon, its hull shuddering with the impact of each blast from the Vresk dreadnought above. Captain Soren Ward stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the chaotic scene unfolding outside. The once bright surface of New Horizon now lay shrouded in a pall of smoke and fire. What had been a thriving human settlement was now an inferno of destruction, and the Vresk were to blame. "Sir, we're nearing the planetary shield," Carla Oren, the tactical officer, reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "The Atlas can't punch through that without disabling their communications array first." Soren nodded, glancing at the tactical readout. The shield flickered ominously, a nearly impenetrable barrier of energy surrounding the planet. The first task was clear: disable the Vresk's communication center, and fast. "Cross," Soren called, turning to his operations officer, "prepare a strike team. I want the ground facility secured within the hour." "Aye, Captain," Cross replied, his fingers flying across the control panel. "The ground forces are ready. We'll be launching our shuttles immediately." Soren turned back to the view of the planet, his expression grim. The time for diplomacy had long passed. He had sent the message to Icor, but it was clear the warlord had no intention of honoring any terms. His forces had already launched several orbital bombardments on New Horizon's surface, decimating key infrastructure. A direct confrontation was unavoidable. "We'll make it," Soren muttered to himself, then addressed the crew. "This is what we signed up for. We take down Icor and his forces. We protect humanity." His voice was unwavering, but inside, doubt began to gnaw at him. The weight of his previous failures, the loss of a team during an ill-fated mission in the Krix system, had always haunted him. He couldn't afford to lose anyone this time. Not on his watch. The Atlas shuddered again as the Vresk dreadnought fired another round. The shots glanced off the Atlas's shields, but the ship rocked with the force of the impact. Alarms screamed, and crew members scrambled to their stations. "Shields are holding, Captain," Carla reported. "But we can't keep this up for long. We need to neutralize their orbital weapons." Soren clenched his fists, mentally counting the seconds. He needed to buy time for the strike team. Time for his men and women to get through the chaos on the surface. "Tell Cross to launch the shuttles." We'll divert their attention with a counteroffensive. Understood, Carla said, tapping a few commands. Shuttles are launching now. We've got a clear path for them. Good. Now let's give them something to worry about. Soren leaned into his chair as the UEG Atlas fired back, the energy cannons lighting up the darkened expanse of space. The Vresk dreadnought retaliated, but this time, the Atlas was prepared. The massive ship veered sharply to the left, avoiding the incoming plasma barrage. Brace for impact. Soren barked as the ship shook once more. The crew held their ground, their eyes locked on the battle unfolding. Sir, enemy ships incoming, Cross said, his voice tense. We've got Vresk fighters flanking us. Soren's mind raced as he surveyed the tactical map. Send out our interceptors, he ordered. We can't afford to be overwhelmed. The Atlas's own fighter squadrons shot out of the hangar bays, sleek machines cutting through the vacuum of space. Within moments, the fighters engaged the Vresk ships, flashing across the sky in a deadly dance of fire and explosions. Soren's gaze never left the battle, but in the back of his mind, he was already thinking about the next phase. Time was running out, and if they didn't disable the communication centers soon, the Vresk would activate the planetary shield again, and humanity would be left at their mercy. On the surface, the situation was no less dire. Soren's strike team had landed near the central Vresk command facility. The atmosphere was thick with ash and smoke, and the ground was pocked with craters from the ongoing bombardment. The team moved swiftly, their weapons drawn and their eyes scanning for any sign of enemy presence. Eyes up, Soren ordered, his voice sharp. He motioned to the team, signaling for them to spread out. His heart raced as they advanced through the ruined streets, knowing that every step brought them closer to the heart of the Vresk stronghold. The comms crackled to life. Captain, we've spotted Vresk ground forces ahead, came the voice of Lieutenant Colonel James Harris, the leader of the strike team. They're dug in behind cover. Requesting permission to engage. Soren's mind was clear. There was no room for hesitation. Engage on my mark, he replied. Take them out quickly. No survivors. The strike team took positions, their movements swift and practiced. Soren's heart beat faster as he moved with them, his instincts guiding him through the smoke-filled streets. They had trained for moments like this. But nothing could fully prepare them for the reality of war. Now! Soren shouted, and the battle erupted. The air was filled with the crackle of energy blasts and the roar of plasma rifles. Vresk soldiers emerged from behind their barricades, their alien forms a blur of motion. The strike team responded with lethal precision, their weapons cutting through the enemy lines. Soren moved swiftly, his rifle raised as he fired at a Vresk soldier who tried to flank him. The shot hit its mark, the alien crumpling to the ground with a strangled cry. But there was no time to savor the victory. More Vresk reinforcements were coming. Colonel Harris, fall back. Soren ordered. We need to disable their comms, now. Harris acknowledged the order, and the team regrouped, pushing forward toward the Vresk facility. Every second counted. The strike team reached the building's entrance, but the door was locked, heavily fortified. Soren didn't hesitate. He tapped his wrist device, activating the override. The door slid open with a hiss, and the team flooded inside. The interior was eerily quiet, the hum of the facility's power generators the only sound. Soren's eyes scanned the room, the walls lined with glowing consoles and alien technology. Commander Ward, we have visual on the communications array, Harris said, his voice low. We're setting up charges now. Good. Make it quick, Soren replied, his mind elsewhere. His hand went to the communicator on his belt. Carla, we're in. Starting the countdown now. Understood, Captain. We're providing support from above. Stay sharp. Soren's hand hovered over the detonator, and he exhaled slowly. The battle was far from over, but this mission, the heart of the operation, was the key to their success. It was time to end this. With a sharp click, the explosives went off, and the comms array went dark. The planetary shield flickered for a moment before dropping completely. Humanity now had a fighting chance. Outside, the UEG Atlas fired another round, and the battle continued. Humanity would stand tall. There would be no surrender. No compromise. "Get ready," Soren said, his voice resolute. "We're just getting started."
The Vresk command facility was a fortress. Its towering walls loomed over the ruined city, dark and foreboding, like the gaping mouth of a beast waiting to devour anything that dared approach. Soren Ward and his team stood in the shadow of the structure, their breaths heavy as the acrid smoke of the burning city stung their eyes. The mission had shifted. What had started as a simple strike to disable the Vresk communications array had now turned into a full-scale assault. With the planetary shield down, the UEG Atlas had launched a barrage, and fighter squads swooped down to engage the Vresk's remaining forces. But that wasn't enough. Not yet. Soren's goal hadn't changed. Icor had to be stopped, and humanity would not bend. "Captain, we've got incoming," Harris, the strike team commander, said, his voice low but urgent. He crouched beside Soren, scanning the horizon through his tactical visor. "Vresk reinforcements, about 50 meters out. They've got heavy weaponry." Soren's heart raced, but his face remained impassive. The fight was only just beginning, but if they were going to break Icor's hold on the planet, they needed to move fast. "Hold them off. We're getting inside that building." Harris nodded, signaling to his team. The soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons, taking up positions behind debris and wrecked vehicles. Soren motioned for them to advance. With the ground tremoring beneath their boots, they made their way forward, a thin line of humanity against the encroaching alien menace. Vresk soldiers appeared from behind the rubble, their sleek alien forms standing out against the smoke-filled air. Their weapons crackled with power, disintegrating the ground in front of them. "Fire!" Soren ordered, and the strike team opened fire in unison. Energy blasts lit up the sky as the Vresk retaliated, their weapons flashing like lightning. Soren felt the sharp sting of the air around him as plasma shots whizzed past, too close for comfort. The team pushed forward, their footsteps heavy and synchronized. Soren's pulse quickened with each step, but he focused on the task at hand. Icor's forces were brutal, but humanity had something the Vresk could never understand: resolve. And that resolve was about to be tested to its limits. A blast from a Vresk heavy cannon sent debris flying in all directions. Soren ducked instinctively, but he didn't stop moving. The team continued, relentlessly advancing, pressing the Vresk back with sheer determination. "Captain, we're almost there," Harris called out, pointing to the entrance of the building. The steel doors, reinforced with alien tech, stood between them and the heart of the Vresk operation. Soren didn't hesitate. He tapped his wrist device, and the door's security systems blinked to life, unlocking with a mechanical hiss. The doors slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond, the walls lined with strange, glowing runes. The air inside was thick with tension. "Go, go, go!" Soren shouted, leading the team into the heart of the facility. The strike team surged forward, weapons at the ready, their eyes scanning for any signs of movement. They moved like shadows through the facility, navigating the maze-like hallways with precision. The alien architecture was foreign and disorienting, but Soren had been in worse situations. He'd learned long ago that the key to surviving the chaos of war was to keep moving, keep pushing forward, and keep fighting. They reached the central control room, a large, circular chamber filled with Vresk technicians monitoring a series of holographic displays. The air was tense, and the low hum of alien machinery filled the room. Soren didn't hesitate. "Weapons free," he ordered. The room erupted into chaos. The strike team fired first, taking out the technicians before they could react. The Vresk guards scrambled to return fire, but the humans were faster, more coordinated. Energy blasts ricocheted off the walls, but Soren's team moved like well-oiled machinery, cutting through the enemy with lethal precision. "Clear!" Harris shouted, and the team poured into the control center, securing the area. Soren stepped forward, his gaze locked on the central console. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, alien symbols and glowing interfaces that shifted with a life of their own. At the center of the console stood a single red button, glowing ominously. "Captain," Harris said, his voice tense. "This is it. If we hit this button, we disable their weapon systems. But we need to hold this room until we get the all-clear from the Atlas." Soren didn't need to be told twice. He moved to the console, his fingers dancing over the alien controls. The system was complex, but Soren's training had prepared him for moments like this. As the screen flickered, revealing the status of the orbital weapon, Soren's heart skipped a beat. "Too late," he muttered under his breath. The countdown had already begun. Icor had anticipated this move. The weapon was active. "Captain, we need to get out of here!" Harris shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "We can't stop it now!" Soren's mind raced. They couldn't let Icor win. There had to be another way. He glanced at the control panel again. There, hidden behind layers of encryption, was another option, an override. It wasn't foolproof, but it was their only chance. "Give me a minute," Soren said, his voice steady. The team set up defensive positions, holding the room as enemy reinforcements began to pour in. The Vresk were relentless, but they were also growing desperate. Soren's fingers flew across the console, his heart pounding in his chest as he bypassed the security systems. The air in the room seemed to thicken with tension. Every second counted. Finally, with a sharp beep, the console flashed green. The weapon's countdown halted. "Done," Soren said, breathing a sigh of relief. The room erupted into cheers, but Soren knew they weren't out of danger yet. "Take positions," he barked. "We need to hold this room until the fleet clears out the Vresk reinforcements. Let's finish this." The team scrambled to set up barricades and defensive lines. They knew the worst was yet to come. Icor would not surrender easily, and the Vresk were no strangers to retaliation. Soren turned his back to the control panel, his eyes scanning the room. The fight was far from over. But as the last of the Vresk guards were eliminated, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had done what they came here to do, they had disrupted Icor's plans. The next move would be the final one. And humanity would not surrender. "We hold the line," Soren muttered, his voice resolute. "Until the very end."
The sky above New Horizon was ablaze with fire as the battle raged on. Captain Soren Ward stood at the head of his strike team, sweat dripping down his brow despite the chill of the command facility's air. The echoes of explosions reverberated through the walls, and the ground beneath them trembled as the UEG Atlas launched another round of plasma fire at the Vresk dreadnought hovering above the planet. It had been hours since they had infiltrated the facility, hours since they had disabled the Vresk communications array and disrupted Icor's orbital weapon. But the real fight had just begun. "We've got company," Harris, the strike team commander, said, his voice gruff but steady. He scanned the hallways through his tactical visor, his rifle gripped tightly in his hands. Vresk reinforcements coming from the lower levels. Soren didn't flinch. His team had already fought through the worst of it, but they were now at the heart of the Vresk stronghold, and they had one goal: stop Icor, once and for all. The final confrontation was imminent, and he could feel the weight of it settling on his shoulders. "We can't let them overwhelm us," Soren said, his voice calm but commanding. "Hold this position. I'll take care of Icor." Harris gave a curt nod and signaled the team to dig in. Soren moved swiftly, his boots clicking against the cold metal floor. The corridor ahead of him was dark, but his enhanced vision systems cut through the shadows. The Vresk warlord was close now, he could feel it. The control room was just ahead, its massive reinforced doors still intact, but barely. They had barely made it through this far without triggering the full wrath of Icor's forces. But the Vresk warlord would never stop until humanity was either broken or destroyed, and that meant there could be no mercy. Soren approached the control room, his weapon raised. The air was thick with tension, but he pushed forward. The doors were wide open, revealing a dimly lit chamber at the center of the facility. And there, at the heart of it all, stood Icor. The alien warlord was as imposing as ever. His tall, hulking frame stood at the center of the room, surrounded by a series of holographic displays and alien technology. His glowing red eyes locked onto Soren's with cold malice, and his voice echoed through the chamber. "You've come far, human," Icarus' voice rumbled, deep and cruel. "But you cannot win. I have already won. Your planet will burn." Soren didn't flinch. His grip tightened on his weapon, and he took a step forward. "Not today," he said firmly. "This ends now." Icor let out a low, guttural laugh. "You think you can stop me? I am the Vresk. I am the future of this galaxy, and you are nothing but an obstacle." Soren's heart pounded, but his mind remained clear. This wasn't just about stopping Icor. It was about sending a message, one that the galaxy would hear loud and clear. Humanity would not be cowed. Not by fear, not by tyranny, and certainly not by terrorists. "I don't need to stop you alone," Soren said, his voice unwavering. "I have something far more powerful at my back." He gestured subtly, his fingers tapping against the trigger. The UEG Atlas fired another devastating round, this time aimed directly at the Vresk dreadnought. The room shook violently as the shockwave reverberated through the walls. Icor turned, his expression one of frustration, but before he could react, Soren lunged forward. The battle was brutal, the sound of energy weapons and alien shrieks filling the air. Soren and Icor clashed, the human captain's agility pitted against the warlord's raw power. The fight moved swiftly, each combatant trying to gain the upper hand. Soren's strikes were sharp and calculated, aiming for Icarus' vulnerable spots, but the alien's massive fists were like wrecking balls, crashing into the walls and floors with destructive force. "You are insignificant," Icor bellowed, swinging his massive weapon at Soren. The blow narrowly missed, sending a massive explosion of debris and sparks in all directions. The force of the blast knocked Soren off his feet, but he quickly regained his balance, eyes locked on Icor. "I'm more than you'll ever understand," Soren snarled, rising to his feet. "And I'll prove it." He rushed forward again, dodging another heavy strike, and this time, he found his opening. He jabbed his weapon into the warlord's side, a calculated shot that pierced through Icarus' armor. The alien howled in pain, stumbling back, but his rage only intensified. Soren didn't give him a chance to recover. With a swift movement, he launched a series of blows to Icarus' exposed limbs, his weapon slicing through the alien's defense. The room seemed to tremble with each strike, the walls shaking as the battle escalated. "I will not be beaten by a weakling like you," Icor roared, his eyes blazing with fury. "You already are," Soren replied, his voice cutting through the chaos. With a final, powerful thrust, he drove his weapon into Icarus' chest, the blade piercing deep into the warlord's heart. The alien leader let out a strangled cry, his body convulsing with the force of the blow. But there was no turning back now. The warlord's massive form crumpled to the floor with a final thud, his eyes dimming as the last of his strength faded. Soren stood over him, panting heavily, his body aching from the intensity of the fight. The room was still, the only sound the quiet hum of the technology that powered the Vresk facility. The battle was over. The doors to the control room slid open, and Harris stepped inside, his face a mixture of relief and awe. "You did it, Captain." "He's down." Soren nodded, his breath still coming in ragged gasps. He looked down at Icarus' lifeless form, feeling a sense of finality wash over him. This was the end of the warlord's reign, and the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. "Now, we finish what we started," Soren said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of his determination. "This galaxy belongs to the free." The sound of the UEG Atlas's cannons firing again echoed in the distance. The final assault on the Vresk fleet was underway, and humanity's victory was all but assured. Soren turned to his team, his gaze unwavering. "Let's make sure this never happens again." Outside, the UEG Atlas led the charge, its fleet scattering the remaining Vresk forces across the stars. Humanity had won, but more importantly, they had sent a message. The galaxy would never forget. And neither would humanity. The final stand had been fought and won.